Hi, I'm Sheldon McLeod, and this is Thinking Out Loud, presented to you by SaltWire. And it was in August of 2021 that homeless encampment in Halifax was removed by police. And, police, there's currently a trial underway to talk about some of the people who are involved in that. In fact, there was a statement from Halifax yesterday that I wanted to talk about here. And this was a news release, a statement from the Board of Police Commissioners regarding an independent review, as they say they have commissioned an independent civilian review of the issues related to the board's oversight, governance, and policy responsibilities that arise out of the response by Halifax Police to those protests back in 2021. And to share with us a bit more, we are joined by Mark Sandler from his office in Toronto. He is a lawyer with, and I'll get you to describe the firm that you're with, sir.
Sure. So I'm a partner in the firm of Cooper, Sandler, Shime Schwartzentruber, and our firm does a lot of work in the area of systemic reviews, independent investigations, and public inquiries. And I think that's how we came to be involved in this project.
And when did you hear from Halifax Regional Police, or was it the Board of Police Commissioners, I assume? When did that call come?
So the board contacted me several months ago and asked me to provide a proposal as to terms of reference for an independent civilian review that they were contemplating. And ultimately, those terms of reference are reflected in what the board has approved going forward, commencing on June the 1st of this year.
And June the 1st, does that have anything to do with the current legal process that's wending its way through the courts?
No, because when you engage in a systemic review of this type, our mandate is not to interfere with any ongoing proceedings, legal proceedings. So we're addressing these issues at a systemic level as opposed to deciding on individual fault or responsibility. So our investigation will not interfere with any ongoing work.
Just reading here some of what the terms of reference are, just to scroll through this motion that was adopted. The Board of Commissioners prepare a draft of a mandate in terms of reference for an independent civilian review and oversight. Tell me exactly what it is that you will be involved with.
So the purpose of this independent civilian review is to examine the policies, the practices, and procedures that are in place at the service and the board to address these kinds of issues when they arise. So we look at a systemic level. What should the role of the Halifax Police be when issues around the treatment of the underhoused and unhoused people in public spaces come up? To what extent should enforcement be involved? To what extent should there be interplay with community agencies and stakeholders before, during, and after any such enforcement action, if it should even take place? How should the police interact with vulnerable or marginalized communities, particularly the underhoused and the unhoused? And so all of the kinds of systemic issues that arise in these issues are up to be explored by our review. The review is to be entirely independent. In other words, nobody dictates to us what findings we make or recommendations we make, and then the board hopefully takes that report at the end of the day and develops a strategic plan as to moving forward to address the issues that we identify. And I guess the other thing I should tell you, Sheldon, is that we engage in a process that's very much inclusive. So not only do we anticipate the cooperation of the service and the board in obtaining documents and obtaining information as required on the policing side, but we'll be involved in a robust public outreach and engagement process. So members of the public will have an opportunity to be heard. They may want to be heard in a more confidential setting, in a safe environment. They may want to be heard through a public forum. We're going to design an outreach and engagement process, as we have for other inquiries and other systemic reviews, that enable people to be heard on the issues of importance to them.
And you've been assured cooperation by Chief Kinsella as well as the Halifax Police Union?
We have. Well, we haven't spoken to the union yet. There'll be one of the stakeholders, obviously, that we'll reach out to. The terms of reference actually reflect the cooperation of the chief and of the board in our work. But one of the things that we always do is we do reach out to the union as well as an important stakeholder, right?
And this is not specific to Halifax. Municipalities across Canada, in fact, North America, have been dealing with or have been trying to deal with the issue of homeless encampments. Where will you source that other information, or will you be looking to other areas to see whether the policies are in place and what actions were taken?
So one of the things we do is we'll do a review that will include examination of what best practices may be across the land and sometimes internationally, because this is an issue that is certainly not unique to Halifax. So we'll gather the literature, we'll speak to experts in the area to get their views on it, and this will help us to develop what we think should be best practices in addressing these issues going forward.
May 31st of 2024 is the deadline. Is that enough time?
I'm hoping that it is enough time. I actually had suggested the 12-month period, and I suggested it for a couple of reasons. Even though it's ambitious, given the issues that we have to examine, I think it's important that the board get the benefit of an independent look at this sooner rather than later. Because the events did take place back in 2021, so some time has already passed. But more importantly, because these issues will continue to surface. We know that. You know that from the local stories that take place. So it's important that we work in a way that is exhaustive, but at the same time timely, right? So that's how we came upon the 12 months. Will there be an opportunity to say a moratorium should be in place on certain actions prior to the release of the final report? Do you envision anything like that coming up? Well, we're not empowered to direct the police what to do and not to do, or the board to do or what not to do. But if we were of the view, for example, that we should issue an interim report because of some exigent circumstances that exist, we also have the power to do that. So that's a possibility, but I don't want to say more about it, because here we are, we're one day into the process, and part of the most important thing that we have to do from the outset is engage in a learning experience, to listen to people as to what did happen and what they see as the issues.
And I'm sure you will hear from a very vocal population who feel very passionate about what happened then and what should be happening now and what should happen into the future. Yeah. You mentioned you have no power to direct the board. The board has no power to direct the police. Is there anything to take away from this report that will be binding? What will this be other than the public will?
Well, to be clear, the board, it's often said that the board can't direct the police on the day-to-day operations of the board, but the board has a very important oversight function and can issue directions on the policy objectives and goals of a police service. So I wouldn't state it as broadly as that. I think the board is empowered to engage in appropriate accountability and oversight, and I think that's one of the things that they want to hear from us on, and what should their role be going forward. So we hope to provide them some assistance on that. As for whether the issue really isn't whether we can bind the service of the board, but if the recommendations that we make are ultimately adopted by the board, that's an important first step in putting in place the kinds of procedures and practices that hopefully you'll find more general acceptance amongst the stakeholders that are involved here. We did one recently. Our firm was counsel to the inquiry into how missing persons investigations are conducted by the Toronto Police in the aftermath of the Bruce McArthur killings of members of the LGBTQ2S+ community. 151 recommendations came out of that. Our recommendations weren't binding on the board of the service, but both the board and the service and the stakeholder community found acceptance in all of the recommendations, and now they're moving forward with implementation. So these reports can have a very, very powerful impact upon how policing is done in our communities.
As they say, sometimes the best sanitization is the disinfectant of sunlight, having everything out in the open and being able to Yeah.
Everything out in the open. And one of the things that we always ensure is that whoever retains us to do an independent review, our report will be a public document. And so that also brings accountability, right?
Well, we'll watch for those public engagement sessions, opportunities for people to provide their perspective, their view. And I spoke recently with a former member of the Board of Police Commissioners who feels they are much more than a rubber stamp, which may have been a case in the past. So I take your point about empowering them to do what's right. 2024 obviously is a municipal election year, so that's outside of your scope and mandate. It's irrelevant to the work that you're doing. Glad to see that this is moving forward for now. Mr. Sandler, anything else that I didn't ask you that you feel is germane to this?
No, I think you did a very good job of covering the topic. Thank you.
I very much appreciate your availability today, and I'm certain we'll have an opportunity to talk in the future. Thank you so much.
Good talking to you, Sheldon. Bye now.